And again, I think the more AI creeps its way into every aspect of our life, the more special real human interactions are going to seem.
Efficiency Unlocked is hosted by two tech-savvy physicians and dear friends of mine, Drs. Adam Carew and Dale Gold, who are experts in using technology to automate routine tasks and increase efficiency in everyday and business life. Let's see what they have for us today.
We're only allotted a certain amount of time to be face-to-face together. Why on earth would we fill that with anything that could be accomplished outside the visit? It just doesn't make any sense.
That's Dr. David Keynes, our guest this week on the show, a board-certified urologist in the Boston area. David loves talking about strategies and tactics that help doctors work more efficiently. This passion led him to founding Wellprept, a health technology company aimed at removing repetitive explanations so that doctors have the kinds of conversations they want to have with their patients.
It's like doing sit-ups, you know? Everybody knows they're supposed to do it, but nobody really actually wants to do it. And that's why Wellprept is so exciting to me, because there's already great content out there. You can put whatever you want in there. You can record your own videos. And then from a patient perspective, it's not vanilla anymore. These are the resources my doctor curated. And that's not a vanilla experience. There's a bunch of toppings on vanilla with whipped cream and sprinkles and whatever.
All right, welcome to this week's episode of Efficiency Unlocked, Nerd Tested, MD Approved. I'm happy to have a guest today, Dr. David Keynes, like the candy cane. We just talked about that, make sure I wouldn't mess that up. But David, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, say something quickly. I actually found out about you by a video that you made where you were just kind of demonstrating how you use one of the ambient scribes and how you made, a pretty, sophisticated template, for your practice. And I just saw that, and, I think I commented and maybe said, that's super cool. And then we got connected, and now we're here on the show. So, really happy to have you here and to talk about your little company project that you started as well, out of necessity.
Absolutely. It's great. It's great to be here chatting.
Yeah. So obviously I want to dive into a little bit about you. I gave obviously a little brief kind of thing, how we met, but what, can you share a bit about kind of your background and, what ultimately led you to create? I mean, I know you mentioned something specifically that you enjoy strategies that help make physicians more efficient, which I can't think of a better guest, to be on this show. So I'd love to hear that background from you.
Yeah. So the brief 30,000 foot view of me is I'm a full-time practicing urologist. I was originally born in South Africa. A lot of extended family still there. When I was very young, my parents moved to Canada and then New York. I spent most of my life growing up in New England. I did undergrad at Yale, and then medical school at Cornell. And ever since I was little, I wanted to be a doctor and especially be a surgeon. And I climbed that huge hill to do that. And not to sound ungrateful, but once I reached the top of the hill, there were a lot of aspects of it that were shocking and unexpected and a little bit disappointing. Not that I'm very grateful for the career I have, and I love taking care of patients, love doing surgery, but sometimes we don't calculate what the arrival looks like. And I was certainly not prepared for some of the very repetitive, mundane aspects of what I found myself doing. And for me, that really impacted me I in terms of burnout. And then I accidentally, I would say, fell into what ultimately became Wellprept, which started off absolutely not as a way to start a company, but just as a way to extricate myself from this hamster wheel I found myself on.
Yeah. I feel like what you just summarized is what I hear from a lot of my close kind of physician colleagues. And, there's been tons of stuff published too, and kind of op-eds and other opinion things. So, and I love that, I always say the best ideas come out of your own personal necessity or some sort of tragedy, that's happened in your life. I think some of the best companies in the world kind of spurred from that. And, why don't you tell us a little bit more about, where that led you to develop, what Wellprept does and what it's kind of solving for?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been interested in, of course, I love helping patients, but there's been a part of me that's always been interested in helping other doctors. For about 10 years of my career, I had this personal finance 101 talk, and I was going around and giving talks to doctor groups about investing, the basics of investing in personal finance. Okay. And I loved it. I loved it because, a few years later, people would come back and they bump into me at a national meeting or something and say, you know what, that talk, it saved me from having a financial advisor. And it really impacted me. Thank you for giving that talk. It made me feel so good to make an impact on other doctors. Then separate from that, I've always been kind of enamored with making myself one of the most efficient people in the EHR. I'm like a madman about creating templates and order sets so that nothing takes me more than one click. So this is just, I'm telling you this to set the stage because I really enjoy, I'm kind of a tech enthusiast, and I'm just painting a picture of the kind of person I am from a nerdy standpoint. So fast forward to, I'm like 7 or 8 years into being an attending, and I'm finding myself in clinic. One patient in particular I always remember is a late 60s engineer who had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And it's an incredibly disarming moment in a person's life when they're diagnosed with a cancer. And there I am sitting with him, and I'm explaining the basics of prostate cancer and what cancer grade means and cancer stage means. And I've explained these things at this point thousands of times, sort of like when you're on the interview trail for medical school and you're asked what made you decide to become a doctor. And after a while, you become tired of hearing your own thing, your own spiel. And
you wish you could just like hit a little button and be like, play.
Right. And you have to retell that in an enthusiastic way. And in medicine, this is a basic thing that we all take for granted, that this is just what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to recreate explanations from scratch with every patient over and over again. And doctors, God bless us, we're a very rule-abiding bunch of people, and that part of what makes us so good and empathetic is that we agreed to do these things. But I guess I had this spark of a bit of a contrarian take, like, I don't want to do this. And frankly, I also don't think it's the best thing for the patient to be sitting here. It took him 2 months to get an appointment with me. And here we are filling the time talking about stuff that could be learned outside the visit. We're only allotted a certain amount of time to be face to face together. Why on earth would we fill that with anything that could be accomplished outside the visit? It just doesn't make any sense. So I did something very simple. I created a link for the NCCN guide for prostate cancer for patients. And I asked my administrative assistant, listen, when we're booking these prostate cancer consultations, can we please send this link? And I created a short link, a bit.ly, I remember. It was 2016. And please say, Dr. Keynes wants you to review this before the visit. And the patients who took us up on that, their visits were like magically better. Not just for me. It's not all about me. It's a little bit about me because I have to do this for 30 years in a row. But of course, the patient is at the center of all we do. But for the patient to be able to come in and have their questions clarified, assess their knowledge, and then deepen their understanding, and then get right to, hey, listen, let's review your biopsy results and let's look at your MRI. And it doesn't work for every patient. There's no universally perfect workflow, but I was enjoying those interactions, and I also thought the patients were enjoying it better too. So I took it a step further, and Loom, I don't know if you've heard of Loom, those screen recording videos where your webcam is a circle in the corner.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, so
I think
Loom
Apple probably copied them, right? With the new
they
screen record. It's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So Loom had just come out, and I can remember this because there was no recording time limit yet. It was so early in the life cycle of that company that they hadn't imposed any limits. And I recorded me explaining a surgery that I do a lot, robotic prostate removal. And I gave a really nice 16-minute explanation of everything that happens in that operation. And I thought for a second, okay, I'm going to send this video to patients before they show up. Are people going to get pissed off? I wondered, are they going to think, who is this guy that he doesn't want to explain this to me in person? Why is he pawning this off on a video of him? And that reaction never happened. It was more like, thank you so much for sending that to me. I have a question about the step in the operation where you do blah, 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 blah. And that, I never had time to have those kinds of conversations before. And I will maintain that one of the things that doctors fundamentally enjoy is having a real human-to-human interaction with somebody, developing a bond with someone. And part of being in the moment with somebody is having somewhat of an unpredictable conversation. Like this podcast, I don't really know what you're going to say next, and you don't know exactly what I'm going to say next. And that's fun. That's what life is about. If we each knew exactly what the other person was going to say, this would be a boring conversation. So I found that my conversations became less predictable and very personal, and frankly, incredibly enjoyable. I started liking clinic day again. So I started. Are you familiar with Linktree? I keep bringing up these other companies.
Yeah, definitely.
So Linktree and a bunch of link aggregators is now a multi-million-dollar industry, but they capitalize on the fact that Instagram and Twitter, and they only let you have one link in your bio, and people wanted 10 links. So they created these very neat little web pages. So I saw that, and my first thought was, oh, wow, this would be a cool way to organize my patient education stuff and only have to send the patient one link. That would be cool. So I did that, and I asked about 10 of my urology friends if they would try this workflow that I had stumbled on, and because I really like it, but maybe I'm just a crazy lunatic and I'm the only person who likes it. So my friends tried this thing out, and you could consider it like a prototype, and they loved it. And a few of them actually printed the QR code for their one link on their business card. And when that happened, sometimes we look back and things seem a little bit neater in retrospect than they were moving forward. It was a messy thing, but I do remember thinking at that moment, okay, wow, I now am not alone. This is a workflow that other people might enjoy, and I've got to get this in front of as many doctors as I can, because I think this can help burnout in a small way, and doctors are just begging for solutions. So now I think this could be a company, and then I was off to the races.
I love that progression of how you saw these little tools that were out there. Obviously, you tested the waters with some of your colleagues. Your colleagues had this great idea to let's just put the QR code on my business card. So anyone that touches it, a QR code is always something that's enticing to scan when it's, something important to you. I love that. And I think, I wanted to go back to one thing you said too, that I think is really important with this too, to mention is, you mentioned that, this was a tool to help you, but really it was a tool to help the patients as well. And I think, there's a fair amount of data that patients don't remember, like, I mean, they remember less than probably 5 to 10% of what is specifically talked about in an encounter, and especially if they're coming to you with some sort of cancer diagnosis or something like that's, I think those you probably even remember less. And even if you're recording it or having a family member there with you, I mean, I think those, the types of things that, by giving someone that time to like watch something and listen to something, I think that really helps. I mean, that's, before the visit, after the visit, whatever. I mean, they can't go back and listen to you over and over again. I mean, they can probably read your note that is generated, but they can go back and listen to about that surgery again, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Just to pull on a couple of threads of what you said there. What part of why this has become an absolute passion for me is I sort of stumbled on patient education as a lever for both camps. It's an efficiency lever for the doctor. It's a wellness lever for the doctor, because we really don't like saying these spiels over and over again, or at least many of us don't. But also for the patient, you're absolutely right. They now have something they can hold on to, and they can take home with them. They can review at their leisure. They can send it to their family members, whoever they like. And so what's so exciting to me is patient education is sort of like a forgotten corner of what we do. And if you walk into most doctors' offices and you say, show me the file cabinet where you keep all your handouts, there is one. They're just like over photocopied hodgepodge of stuff. There's a place where there's a stack of brochures. Most of them are not really great. And if you ask a doctor who's just graduated and about to start their practice, what are the things you need to get your ducks in a row? They would probably say, I need to work on my EHR. I need to make sure I have my templates. I need to have my order sets. I probably should get some disability insurance. And if they're a surgeon, I need to make sure the OR has my preference cards. What I'm trying to inject in there is, and how about your patient education materials? Have you got those set? It shouldn't be an afterthought, because it's a kind of a spark that can help you and the patient and just make things more enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I remember, the company I joined, was a large health system out of residency. And honestly, one of the reasons why I joined was because of what you just said. I knew they had really good, both clinical content on the provider side, and then there was also really good educational content, because I'm family medicine. I'm like the jack of all trades, master of none. I need to be able to give that, and I agree with you. It's I think in what you just explained, especially I think the more specialized someone is, that more important that information really needs to be, and it needs to be slightly personalized, probably too. I mean, just because of the variability that happens. I mean, I think there's big companies out there that provide patient education, but it's very, very vanilla, this is what diabetes is, and this is how you check your blood sugar, which is great. I don't want to do that either. So I think that's what's brilliant about Wellprept, is that it's as simple as it is. It's actually it can be pretty profound. I mean, true story. I was just walking with my wife this morning. We do walk our dogs in the morning, and she's like, "Oh, what's the podcast this morning?" And so I just briefly told her about you, and I was like, "Yeah," I was like, my wife's an OBGYN, and I was like, "Actually, Beth, you should definitely listen to this product and go look at this," because I was like, this could be perfect for your practice. I was like, how many times do you explain, the hysterectomy that you're going to do, or the endometrial biopsy, or whatever? It's just, you could explain all that, and it could be you on video. And so anyway,
I mean, how many times has she said, the uterus is a muscle, and fibroids are when some of the muscles get hypertrophies and they create these little nodules. And I mean, she's probably said some version of that thousands of times. There's no need for it. It's not there's anything necessarily wrong with the explanation. It's more it's just wasting everyone's time who's sitting together. But I just want to double click on what you said about vanilla content. That's exactly my experience with most patient education materials, is that it is very vanilla. Patient education is is like it's like it's like doing sit-ups, everybody knows they're supposed to do it, but nobody really actually wants to do it. And that's why WellPrep is so exciting to me, because there's already great content out there. You can put whatever you want in there. You can record your own videos. And then from a patient perspective, it's not vanilla anymore. These are the resources my doctor curated. And not a vanilla experience. There's a bunch of toppings on vanilla with whipped cream and sprinkles and whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, and what you're getting into is what I always like to, we call it like under the hood. We like to go kind of, what is that differentiator, in the product? And I think you just described, clearly one of them. Because I think that's key. And that's why, simple things can be so kind of transformational. Even if it's in a market where there is other companies that are doing similar things or trying to solve for the similar problem, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the main things that differentiates WellPrept, if anyone's ever had a patient hospitalized and then generated an after visit or a discharge summary that includes patient education information, it typically comes, I'm just using that as one example, but it typically comes from a library that the hospital has paid to license. And if you've ever read what's actually in there, it's not wrong information, but it's just so basic to the point of being maybe not helpful.
Yeah.
And so what WellPrep does, it's really the only patient education platform that I know of that allows you to put anything you like on there. A link to a podcast, a link to a support group, a video of maybe you explaining something, and a PDF, and
yeah,
whatever you want. It's multimedia, and as far as I'm aware, it's the first of its kind in that regard. And I think that that's what most patients are sort of expecting nowadays. They're going to Google that stuff anyway. And how nice is it from a stress relief standpoint to be able to tell somebody, oh, you don't have to do that. I did it for you. This is just my favorite stuff. Here you go.
Yeah, I love that. I guess let's dive. I mean, I have so many ways that we could talk about, because my mind immediately goes to like, oh, what could like the future of this be? Like, how can this evolve? But let's save that for a bit, because I think we should touch on that though.
Yeah.
But I think like, a little bit about. So I guess when did WellPrept become like an official product?
Well, the idea for it, I think I sort of started working on it about 3 years ago. And it became, so the early genesis of it is somewhat interesting. I don't have an MBA. I didn't take any business classes in college. In some ways, I had no right to start a business, but once you actually get going and just do the first few things, if an idea is good enough that it won't leave you alone, then the momentum just carries you forward. Or at least that was my impression of it. So I had to hire a software team. I wish software development was one of my skills. Unfortunately, it isn't. So that's, somewhat of an expensive thing when you don't have that skill. But about 2 years ago, I would say, I've officially hired a team in order to build, and it's not totally straightforward to create something where someone can make an account and make their own WellPrep pages and change it on the fly and send it to patients. So a US-based team in Idaho actually built the first version 1. And I would say we're about a year in for it being like an official product that was scalable, that you could actually use it. If you stumbled on WellPrept and created an account, you can actually go ahead and send it to your patients, and it was fully functioning.
Yeah. Who's like the primary customers now? Like, is it specific specialties, or is it groups, or, even larger systems? I mean, is there any of?
Yeah. So we have, I can answer that a few different ways. Somebody gave me some very good early advice, which was, imagine you're trying to start a fire and you have logs and you have no kindling. You just have a match and you have logs. Your best chance of getting a fire going is by holding the match in one spot. If you keep waving it all around, you have no hope of starting the fire. So I'm a urologist. So I held the match in urology. And so predominantly we have expanded primarily in urology because that was initially my extended network, and then grown by word of mouth. There's two what I would call sales motions. One is to individual doctors who hear about us from a colleague or hear about us online or on a podcast or something, and they go and they set up their own account, and within 20 minutes, half an hour, they're up and running. They could start using it in the clinic the next day. But lately, this second motion to teams and systems has been our primary focus. And very often what happens is a single user has such a good experience that they then contact us and say, hey, my whole group wants to get on, if they're in private practice, or if they're in an academic hospital environment, my whole department wants to get involved. Can you talk to us about what that would look like? And we have a separate teams and groups offering, which is more robust and more white glove, where we set up everyone's pages for them, and we digitize all their handouts that they have, and we create these QR grid handouts, which I'll show you. I know there's no video, but we create handouts so that they can leave them in their office, and basically they can ditch their entire file cabinet. So our predominant motion lately has been signing up groups, and we just created a partnership with the largest consortium of urologists in the country called MUSIC, the Michigan Urologic Surgical Improvement Collaborative. In the meantime, what tends to happen is, because when people enjoy a workflow, they tend to talk about it. Urologists will tell their friends. And so there's been an adjacent move to the specialties that touch urology the most: OBGYN, radiation oncology, gastroenterology, orthopedic surgery. So we're building out verticals as enthusiastic users find us. And so we're now in a lot of different specialties. One of the key things that we do is we call it seed content or starter content. We have found that if we just give people Wellprept as an empty vessel and we say, build your own library, nobody uses it, or very few people. Yeah. So what we do is we used AI to help us curate and search the web for the best open source content. So within a few weeks, we can create seed content for a new specialty. And when we start off doctors with a whole bunch of good things, then they're happy to tweak it, subtract a couple, add their own stuff, and they totally get it. Mm-hmm. So that's been sort of the winning combination for us. And now it goes from there. We're in some discussions with health systems where a department has had just such a great experience that it makes sense to look at institution-wide adoption.
Very cool. No, I love that. And well, I guess first off, I love your analogy of like the log with the match. Like that's like very cool. I think I'm going to definitely use that. I think it could apply to a lot of things in life. But I think that's, for someone that you said, I didn't have a business class or anything. I think I don't either, but I think from reading things and hearing others that do have that experience, you hear that all the time, right? Like they say, don't try and boil the ocean, just yes. Focus on your little niche first. And once that niche catches fire, then you can easily spread, or more easily spread, but don't do it too fast. Don't do it too crazy, because
if we had spread ourselves too thin, and we said, all right, we're going to add a new specialty every 2 weeks, and we're going to get out there's like over 60 medical specialties. Within a year, we're going to do all 68. I don't think we would have had the early success that we have had.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we have focused on urology and really organically by word of mouth built trust with urologists that what we're doing makes sense, and people tell other people about their good experience has been the best thing for us. Yes, we're now in other specialties around urology and beyond, but
Mm-hmm.
we're doing it in a very measured, careful way. And the early adopter personalities who are most likely to be patient with, let's say we don't have a lot of seed content in their specialty, the people who are sort of like me, who are early adopters, find us because they had imagined something like this already, and they're just primed to instantly take it up, and they're okay building their own content. We have people in family medicine. We have cardiologists. We have interventional radiologists. We have the sort of early adopter personalities in those
Mm-hmm.
specialties. But most of our efforts are where we have the bulk of our users, and we're trying to be careful about how we move forward without disrupting the whole thing.
Got it. All right. So before we hit the nerd alert round, which I know you're probably most excited for, and I always am too, because that's when I get to find out some cool extra info about these guests. I want to talk about a little bit about kind of the future of where you think this could go. I'll just say personally, you hear a lot of chatter around, just the large language models and the rate at which they're going to improve. And, could someday a physician have kind of a David Kane's kind of avatar that a patient will be able to interact with? Do you think what you've created with Wellprept, could kind of evolve into that even? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. I know you think about probably a lot of this type of stuff, and where's patient education going?
Yeah. So that is just a wonderful question. There's a few things that come to mind. I would label myself an AI enthusiast. Okay. I'm an early adopter of AI scribes. I told you I was a template enthusiast as recently as 3 months ago. My entire EHR workflow was only templates, and I thought it was perfect. I have now completely switched to AI because I think my notes come out better. They reflect the patient voice better. My cognitive load is lower. All that to say is I'm skeptical, actually, surprisingly so, of AI for patient education, because my hope is that technology is harnessed in order to have a high touch experience with the patient. What I mean is maybe high tech and high touch are actually two sides of the same coin. So let me just flesh that out a little bit. What I mean is, one of the reasons why I love AI scribes is that I'm having a better interaction with my patient. I have more time with them if I want. I'm looking them in the eye, and I'm getting back to the reason why I wanted to do this job in the first place. Same thing with patient education. I'm trying to provide them with patient education materials so that the human interaction feels even more special and better.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I'm afraid of is, of course, I'm looking at AI avatars, and part of me wonders if Wellprept should dip their toe in that direction to where we can create automatic videos with AI avatars for all of our users. But I'm actually, right at the present moment today, skeptical of that, because for a few reasons. I'm not sure if that's what patients want. And again, I think the more AI creeps its way into every aspect of our life, the more special real human interactions are going to seem.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, no, I do.
Yeah. So I would say I cautiously have my finger on the pulse of where that's headed, and I'm at this very moment almost defending Wellprept from that. But where do I see the future? Here's what gets me really excited. I think that Wellprept has the potential not just to make work more enjoyable for doctors, but to improve patient care. this is a lofty goal, but let me tell you where I'm going with this. If Wellprept achieves the scale that I know it can, let's say, let's use family medicine because that's your specialty. Let's say there's a substantial number of family medicine doctors using Wellprept to where you can say every week, Wellprept resources are shown to 2 million patients weekly. And then you identify a real pressing clinical problem in the country from a public health standpoint, like smoking cessation or gun safety or seatbelt use. I don't know if I'm a urologist talking out of my arena.
You're doing a good job. No,
okay.
great.
So let's say let's say distracted driving. I mean, it's a public health issue.
Sure.
Maybe it's something you want to mention at your visits, but there's no time. If you have a really well-oiled river of education materials that hits millions of patients weekly, then a focus on creating quality materials in the realm of distracted driving, you just put it in that river, and it actually improves care and improves outcomes because you've created a pipeline of education material flow that's entrenched, and you know how many people are going to see those materials you've created. You see where I'm getting at. I think that can be a really powerful public health mechanism to improve lives.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that's the thing with, like, I guess with anything as it scales up, it has that potential to make so much more of a, like you said, a public health impact or just a more substantial impact.
I mean, I can tell you in sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
In prostate cancer, I'll give you an example that's closer to my heart. If you compare the rates of overtreatment for low-risk prostate cancer in the U.S. compared to Sweden, in Sweden, doctors have it all together. They nearly never overtreat low-risk prostate cancer. And the United States, although we're getting better, we're still not great at that.
Mm-hmm.
If Wellprept gets in the hands of enough urologists to where we can say nearly every new diagnosis, those men encounter Wellprept resources on a weekly basis, then if you make a dedicated push to decrease anxiety for men with low-risk prostate cancer, I mean, wow, like that's incredible. Could you actually impact overtreatment rates by tackling it from a patient education point of view? Most of the ways we do this now is we try to educate doctors with choosing wisely campaigns and things like that. What gets me up out of bed in the morning is this thought that, like, wow, maybe we could tackle this better from a patient education standpoint. I think it's an overwhelmingly exciting opportunity.
No, I so 100% agree with you with that. I think, oh geez, that's my dog. See, knocking my microphone around. Hello, Nash. Yeah, he doesn't realize that we're live on a podcast. Yeah, no, I love that what you just said. I mean, it's just so spot on. I just 100% agree. I honestly don't have anything else to add to it because I actually agree with it so much. But I think that's needed. I think, again, putting on my hat, I do a ton of, I'm like a virtualist now. So I do a lot of like front end, patient complaint concerns, ranging from, acute things to, something else that they have a question about. But, the amount of times I have to just explain that, like, a sinus infection, doesn't really become a bacterial problem until either a certain time or a certain severity of symptoms have happened. I'm like a broken record, and so thankfully the platform I'm using it's chat based, and we can create like little, canned kind of content on our own or on the system. And so at least saves me from having to repeat those things. But, if that could just be moved forward more, so, I don't know if there'd be an education campaign on sinus infections for the country, but I think for like low risk prostate cancer, or if your PSA is just slightly elevated, but it doesn't meet all these other criteria, I think that type of education to the public could really help. I mean, I think it would help what you were describing, that our colleagues across the pond have, been able to successfully do.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we could probably talk for about 2 hours, and maybe we'll have to have you back on here to talk about more. But let's jump into the nerd alert round, because I think I got a few questions too lined up in here that I did not prep you with in any way, shape, or form. So some of these I picked because I knew your personality ahead of time. So let's jump in. I think you mentioned music on your playing guitar. So what's a song that always makes you happy when you hear it?
Into the Mystic by Van Morrison. Something about that song. It's one of the greatest songs ever written. My Spotify feed auto suggests that to me constantly because I think I've played it about 7,000 times. There's some parts of my life where obviously I want to minimize my repetitive spiels, but musically, there's some things I do want to hear over and over and over again. That's one of them.
That's cool. I love it. What is, I guess, no, this is a flip from music. If you could be any type of other animal, what would it be and why?
Oh man. I have 2 dogs. Your dog just knocked over the microphone. I have 2 dogs. I would probably be a dog. And the reason is we should always try to see the very best in people. Dogs do that instinctively. And I'm not great at that. I'm kind of a cynical person. Sometimes I'm jaded. The dog will see a stranger and just tails wagging,
yep.
assuming the best in every other species. I think that dogs got to be my answer for that.
That's so true. Yeah, I know. And dogs, and dogs like bring so much happiness to humans, right? I mean, it's so much happiness. I mean, even in this one that came in here that knocked my microphone, when he was a puppy a year ago, I mean, he wasn't a terror, but it was like he was a puppy, and it's like, even though he chewed up countless things and destroyed our outdoor furniture, I mean, we're just kind of like, all right, whatever, you wanted to chew on something. And so, that's hilarious. All right. So I want to make sure I get in a question about like, this one is like kind of a serious one, but I mean, you're like an efficiency nut, right? And do you have something that you like to do, that you use or like to do, that you think is like worthy of sharing with folks on here? Is there, and it could be as simple as a tactic or, an app that you particularly like. Do you have anything you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I no disclosures, but I would put a plug in for the AI scribe I've settled on, which is Heidi. It's changed my entire workflow and saves me hours every day. I mean, you can create templates to where the notes come out exactly how you want them. And I've been using them not just for, everybody thinks of clinic notes, but I've been talking to patients with speakerphone on and using them for telephone notes. If I get called to the hospital to do a consult, I use it for inpatient consults. I write letters to the referring PCP in a second that it's very specific to the note, generated from the note. It is, as I recommend that, I would just make an umbrella statement, which is, I was so down on our profession as a whole, recommending that college students don't do this for a living. I hate to say, and I no longer feel that way. I actually feel like because of things like Heidi, and I'm biased, but Wellprept, I think we're on the precipice of medicine being just the most wonderful thing to do, and moving from one meaningful patient interaction to another without the additional layers of crap, frankly, that is, surrounding it. And so that's a long-winded answer, but
I love it.
That's the big picture for me.
Well, I mean, for Nerd MDs, when Dale and I came up with that, we came up with it because the URL was available, and we're like, that's an amazing URL. Let's take it. But, I mean, our catchphrase on there is like letting doctors be doctors, and because I think it encapsulates what you just described. I think all these things that are coming and are helping physicians just be physicians again, and have more of that time for what matters. So
yeah, I mean, I always say, just to add on that, I think about the college student version of yourself who decided they wanted to go to medical school. Like, what was it that sparked that desire? It was probably some kind of patient interaction that you witnessed, shadowing a doctor or something. You looked at that and you said, God, that's amazing. I want that. Yeah. And I think finally, again, high tech, but high touch. I think finally technology is going to rally around us to where we can just have those interactions we were hoping for when we decided to do this.
No, I absolutely agree and love that. I mean, I think what I want to wrap with today, I always give our guests kind of the final thought or something. I mean, what you just said right there could have easily been the final thought. But, you mentioned something on our little, intake survey that, you feel pretty strong, or I think you have some thoughts around the importance of, a physician-led business, or, having a physician kind of at the helm. I've posted about that before, that I don't think there can be a health tech company if there's not a clinician either, at the top, or at least part of that, team. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that to kind of wrap up the show.
Yeah. I mean, I feel strongly that physicians are in the best position, since we're boots on the ground, to have felt the pain of whatever problem you're trying to solve. The best ideas obviously solve a problem, a painful problem. And they say about entrepreneurs, I think is true, that you imagine a future, you see a solution, and then you work to make that future a reality. But if you're not living inside of it, just to take the example we were just talking about, AI scribes, if I compare all the AI scribe companies and look at which ones have either physician founders or prominent physician leaders on the team, you can actually, or at least I can actually see where the teams that don't have that fundamentally miss something. It's like serving ketchup with sushi. You're like, why did you give me ketchup? It's not, it's not right. So it's incredibly important. Now, the problem is that physicians often feel like they don't have permission, that they want permission. Who am I to start a company? Am I allowed to do that? I don't have an MBA. Do I need to take a course? All these kind of ideas that I think cross a lot of doctors' minds. So if I were to just give a message to listeners out there who have an entrepreneurial bent, just do it. And you know how it starts? It starts with being primed to look for problems. It's a different way of being. So most people just do I don't mean this in a negative way, but they go through their day to get the job done, and they get home and they just do their work, which is lovely and wonderful. And good ideas won't generally occur to people with that mindset. But if you're looking for them, and you're primed to look around at what your workflow is, and what are the things that just should not be so, that are really just infuriating, and then how could that be solved? It's amazing how many problems and solutions will hit you over the head if you take that mindset.
Yeah, I love that, David. Thank you a ton for joining me today and taking time out of your actual clinic schedule to do this, but really appreciate your insights, and obviously I'm sure we'll keep in touch through LinkedIn and whatnot, but I wish you the best of luck, and have a great summer.
Thank you so much, Adam. I would love to come on again and give you an update.
Cool. Thanks, David. Take care. Thank you for listening to Efficiency Unlocked, Nerd Tested, MD Approved, a Nerd MD's podcast by Drs. Adam Carew and Dale Gold.